From iconic cowboy hats and made-to-measure shoes to streetwear staples like Supreme and Air Jordan, we traveled the world to discover the stories behind the most expensive luxury clothing and accessories. Is the secret behind these price tags just brand hype, or is it the craftsmanship that makes them so expensive? We begin in Kojima, Japan, where a pair of hand-dyed denim pants can cost over $2,000.
It takes between 1 to 2 months for Hiso Manabe to dye these threads a deep indigo blue. Denim made from these threads will maintain this rich color, and so will Manabe's nails for 3 weeks. That's because Manabe uses real indigo instead of the synthetic dyes most jeans are made with today. A pair of Momotaro jeans dyed with natural indigo can cost over $2,000. But using real indigo is just one element that can raise the price of Japanese denim. Each stage of production requires meticulous attention. So what exactly makes Japanese denim different? And is that enough to make it so expensive? In basic terms, Japanese denim refers to denim made in Japan, but today it often implies selvage denim. The name comes from the way fabric is woven on these old shuttle looms. They weave fabric with a sealed or self-finished edge, hence the name Selv Edge. It means the end of the fabric won't fray or unravel. You'll notice a pair of selvage jeans by the cuff. There's typically a colored line along the outseam. This type of denim is made here in Kojima, Japan.
本当に10代からジーンズはこの町のジーンズを履いてた。
Momotaro is one of Kojima's most well-known denim brands. But before Momotaro makes denim, it must first dye the threads. The company's most expensive jeans are hand-dyed with natural indigo. Natural indigo comes from the leaves of the indigofera plant. Dyeing fabric with natural indigo has been a valued art form in Japan for centuries.
単純作業の繰り返しよね。根気がいるのと原料が高い。これはやはりもっと工夫していかなきゃやっぱり量産できないと思う。
Manabe dyes 60 rolls of cotton over several days. He wrings each roll out and hangs it up to dry before dyeing another.
5回でこのぐらい。これは乾くと半分ぐらいの色になっちゃう。
Manabe must dye each roll a total of about 30 times. Otherwise, the color won't be a dark enough blue. Dyeing jeans this way doesn't only take longer, it also costs more. A kilogram of some synthetic indigo can cost between $4 and $5. Depending on the quality, natural indigo might cost 10 times that.
非常に高い。大体我々がその調達するのは1票15万ぐらいするんだね。
That one bale is only enough to dye about 15 pairs of jeans. Although using natural dye raises the cost of production, it has unique effects on jeans that can't be produced by synthetic dyes.
植物には青の染料だけでなくて余分な染料もあるんで、少し黄みがかった染料が含まれている。そういったものがやはり微妙に青の色を変化させる。そこにはインディゴでは出せない色がある。
Today, cheaper synthetic dyes have mostly replaced natural ones, so jeans still made with natural dyes are often considered a premium product. Which is partly why Momotaro's Kinton or gold-labeled jeans are worth over $2,000. The increased price of this pair is a nod to the extra effort, skill, and money needed to dye the threads by hand and get the color just right. Not all Japanese denim or Momotaro jeans are made with natural indigo. But even so, the price remains high, around $200 to $300 for a pair like this. And that goes back to the way Japanese denim is woven. Before Toyota made cars, it made looms like this. Originally introduced in the 1920s, these Toyota looms are no longer made today. And although they look and sound like they're working fast, weaving fabric this way takes 5 times longer than weaving on modern projectile looms.
もともと世界で、アメリカで、作られたジーンズもその当時はその機械しかなかった。もう今1世紀経ってもヴィンテージのそのジーンズがやはり、1900年あるいは1920年、ね、あたりのジーンズがいい。でやはり何百万も出して古着を買い集めるわけです。
Despite the looms being automated, an experienced Momotaro technician has to keep a close eye on them as they run. He checks to see each loom is working smoothly and that all the threads are aligned correctly. Even so, it's possible something will go wrong.
直しながら使ってますね。部品は新しく作られていませんので、その部品一つ一つを、古い機械から、外して、使ったり。
On top of weaving slowly, the looms produce fabric less than a yard wide. That's about half the width of non-selvage denim, so producers need more fabric to make a pair of selvage jeans. This is yet another factor that increases the cost of production and ultimately the final price of the jeans. Shuttle looms are also less precise than projectile looms, but variations in the fabric make each yard unique. And ironically, that's what gives these jeans one of their biggest appeals. While most other jeans have a smooth surface, Japanese denim is a little bit rougher.
この凹凸がやはりデニムで一番大切な経年変化の縦落ち、当たり、そういったものに現れている。
While most Momotaro jeans are made on the automated looms, the most expensive gold label jeans are produced with an even slower, more traditional method. By hand with an antique loom. It takes 1 hour for Kazuki Ikeda to weave just 10 centimeters of fabric. While this process raises the price, the extra effort gives the jeans a distinctly different feel.
一番の違いというのはやはりこの肌触り。通常の汎用のものでしたら、ちょっと硬さであったりゴワゴワした感じがするんですけれども、手織りの場合は最初から、柔らかい、質感で履いていただくことができます。
And for denim enthusiasts, traveling from Thailand to Tokyo is worth the trip to buy Momotaro's most expensive pair.
Usually when you brought a new pair of jeans, you feel it's a little bit hard. And you feel like it's a little bit hard to move at first, right? But this one, even from the start, yeah, it feels so comfortable, like you have worn it for some times.
After the fabric is woven by hand or shuttle loom, it heads to the sewing room. According to Heddles, on average, most other types of denim weigh between 11 and 14 ounces, while most denim from Japan weighs 20 ounces. A heavier fabric makes Naomi Takebayashi's job more challenging.
で一番太いのはタコ糸状態の0番はもう本当に太くてとても縫いづらいです。年数で言えば本当に何年縫っても私らも何年縫っても難しいところもありますしね。難しいというか縫うのはもう全然だけどあれでよかったかなとかいうことはありますね。
Another cornerstone of Japanese denim is the artisanal nature of the way the jeans are finally formed. At Momotaro, all the stitching is done by hand. The same goes for adding each copper rivet. The final look and feel of a finished pair largely depend on Takebayashi's dedication to detail. Because shuttle looms are less precise, the fabric will naturally have several imperfections. But if Momotaro's retail stores find anything wrong with a pair of jeans, they mark it with a small sticker and send it here to the quality control room. Takebayashi sifts through the flagged jeans using a tweezer to repair each marked spot. Momotaro is one of around 40 denim makers in Kojima, considered the birthplace of denim in Japan. While Japanese denim from this city has found a luxury category to call its own, the denim industry hasn't been prominent in Kojima for very long.
世の中、日本中がですね、やっぱり、アメリカに憧れて、東京オリンピック1964年ですかね、それを契機にですね、ガラッとやはり、自由とアメリカというのにすごい憧れが強くなり、音楽も映画もそうですけども、ファッションも、その中でも学生運動でいろんなものが、もう自由奔放にいろんな形が、行われてきた。でその中でやはり1965年、が初めてこの小島というところでジーンズの生産が始まったと。
In the decades since, Japanese denim has reached far outside Japan. Today, it's considered one of the finest types of denim in the world. A Stetson cowboy hat is stretched, shrunk, and submerged in water before it fully takes form. Those are only a few stages in the 2-day process that can make these hats so costly. You won't find the popular Skyline style for less than $245 on Stetson's website. That's little compared to this one, which will set you back $5,000. But it's not just how these hats are made. Stetson is one of the few hat brands that have reached icon status. So what made Stetson so iconic? And is that why these hats are so expensive? Producing a Stetson cowboy hat is a complicated and costly process. The production begins here, in Garland, Texas, where workers turn fur into felt. Stetson says it's one of the few cowboy hat makers in the US that makes hat bodies from scratch. This means it buys its own raw fur pelts and processes them into felt, compared to some other companies that buy pre-made hat bodies with the fur already blended. Fur is the biggest indicator of quality, and therefore has the biggest impact on price. In the fur room, Stetson stores fur from Portugal, New Jersey, Belgium, and Ukraine.
Okay, this is some of our natural beaver. Of course, this is the finer beaver hats are made out of natural beaver. Very tight fur, very durable fur. Good for all the weather, rain, nice feel.
This kind of fur isn't cheap. Just 1 pound of beaver fur can cost $125, and chinchilla fur can cost 4 times the price. Now consider that Stetson only produces about 2 hats per pound of fur. After the different furs are mixed together, the blend goes through a blower, which separates long hair from down. Stetson uses down fur because it produces a stronger felt. The machines in the factory are crucial, but the job couldn't be done without trained workers. The company employs more than 200 workers at 2 factories to guide the hats through each stage, another element that ultimately impacts the price.
About 100 sets of hands touch every single one of our hats as of right now.
Workers pass the felt through several stages of shrinking until the proper hat size is reached. Later, during the tipping stage, a worker helps create the crown by stretching and pulling the hat. Then, as an employee turns the felt, brass fingers of another machine push the bottom out to form the brim. One of the last stages of producing the hat body happens here at the forming machine, where the hat is submerged in hot water. An employee pushes down the former, and out comes the final hat body. At the finishing factory, machines taper and shape the crown of the hat, but the next few stages require special attention. Even as a machine sands the hat, an employee again must be there to guide and feel it. The worker will decide when it has reached the proper thickness. At other stations, craftspeople use scissors and pliers to secure the buckle accent. Others cut and sew on the leather strap by hand, then the inner satin lining. No hat makes it out of the factory without a final quality inspection. All hats go through roughly the same process, but premium ones have a few more features that impact the final cost. At $5,005, the Diamante Premier hat is one of the most expensive cowboy hats you can buy. It's made with 2 high-quality furs, chinchilla and beaver. There's also the addition of the 14-karat gold buckle set, which can add $1,000 to the cost of a hat. Quality is only one reason Stetson has the confidence to make a hat like this and be sure customers will buy it. To understand the other piece of the puzzle, you have to go back to Stetson's beginning, more than 150 years ago. The founder, John Batterson Stetson, is often credited with inventing the modern-day cowboy hat and setting the precedent for what this style should be.
There are many replicas of the Burberry trench coat, but they were the original, and they sort of set the industry standard for that specific product. And I think Stetson has also done the very similar thing, where they have set a precedent with the celebrities, the politicians, wearing the hat and giving it that added value of, yes, this is a luxury piece.
In the late 1800s, sharpshooter Annie Oakley became one of the first famous figures to don the hat. In fact, in 2012, a Stetson hat worn by Oakley sold at auction for just over $17,000. While Stetson saw a dip in popularity in the 60s, demand picked back up in the early 80s, reignited by the release of the Indiana Jones movies. The hat reached the heads of other famous figures, like President Ronald Reagan, around this time too. But by the 21st century, the kind of famous face wearing a Stetson had changed. Dua Lipa's 2021 video for Love Again opens on a shot of a floating Stetson, then a shot of the singer looking stylish and seductive while wearing the hat. And here are 2 more notable examples that show how Stetson has linked itself with high status. There's Gigi Hadid holding a Stetson hat in this Vogue shoot in 2018, and 3 years later, Beyoncé wearing Stetson on the cover of Harper's Bazaar in September 2021. Both prove again how the brand has evolved to something worthy of being worn by the world's biggest names.
If you idolize those musicians, you're going to want to wear the brands that they wear.
This is the most important moment in the process of creating a South Sea pearl. The moment when Harry inserts the nucleus into an oyster around which a pearl will form. And if he's imprecise, the resulting pearl may come out misshapen. The goal is this: a near-perfect round pearl with a large 20mm diameter. That's more than twice the size of the more common Akoya pearl. And this single pearl can sell for $1,500, compared to $75 for a high-grade Akoya pearl. A necklace of near-perfect South Sea pearls can cost over $200,000. So why is making these pearls so much more difficult? And what makes them so expensive? South Sea refers to the southern portion of the Pacific Ocean. In these waters, just off the coast of Lombok, Indonesia, pearl farms like Afdol Pearl are growing cultured pearls. These are pearls that require a human to put something inside an oyster instead of harvesting naturally occurring pearls. And South Sea pearls are the most expensive variety of cultured pearls. That's in part because of how long it takes to make a South Sea pearl. While some freshwater oysters can churn out dozens of smaller pearls within 3 months, it takes about 5 years to cultivate a single South Sea pearl. The oyster it comes from, the Pinctada maxima, can only make 1 at a time. And only 1/4 of these oysters survive cultivation. That's why the pearl farmers have to go to great lengths to keep the oysters alive. It starts in this highly controlled laboratory where lab technicians must create the perfect conditions for oyster larvae to grow into healthy, pearl-producing adults. They have to maintain a room temperature of exactly 20 degrees Celsius and feed the larvae the phytoplankton they need to grow. To do this, they combine salt water from the South Sea and sodium hydroxide and store it for 5 days until there's enough plankton. Lab techs feed the plankton to nets of baby oysters and monitor their growth for about 45 days. That's around the time they reach at least 1 millimetre in diameter and are old enough to be transferred to sea. The oysters are transferred to save on the costs of rearing bigger oysters, which can get expensive.
Ya, kalau pelihara di darat harus kita bikin planktonnya. Kita beli plankton, kita bikin. Itu biayanya agak besar dia.
In the South Sea, the oysters get the warm waters and food they need to mature. But this is also where most of them will die, without producing a single pearl.
Itu yang akan hidup nanti cuma 25.000 dari 10.000 itu. 2.500 maksudnya. Karena 75% itu dia pasti meninggal.
That's why pearl farmers have to check on the oysters monthly to ensure they're still growing, eating and healthy. They pull the nets of oysters up from the sea and clean the shells. This helps prevent predators from feeding off the oysters and eventually killing them.
Ya, agar ini kadang kalau kerangnya kotor kan ketutup semua. Jadi susah untuk makan. Di sini banyak lumut, banyak kotoran, banyak bakteri juga. Ada ulat di sini. Kadang-kadang itu yang bisa bikin mutiara jelek. Jadi tujuannya juga untuk kita bangunkan. Kadang-kadang kerang tidak mau bangun.
After up to 2 years of nursing, when the oysters are large enough, implantation can begin. For cultured pearls, implantation is the most important step. When a nucleus is implanted, the oyster sees it as an irritant and reacts by building protective layers of nacre around it. This becomes the pearl. Harry is demonstrating where the nucleus is implanted on an opened oyster.
Terus yang ini inti namanya. Jadi sebelum masukkan ini terbuat dari kulit kerangnya.
He tears the oyster's gonads and injects the nucleus in the middle. He then adds SIBO under the nucleus. SIBO is a mantle tissue cut from another oyster that surrounds the implanted nucleus. It's essential to the pearl quality, and without it, the oyster won't produce any pearls at all. Harry is the only person Afdal trusts with this step. That's because the nuclei don't come cheap. Mahmoud buys the nuclei from Japan, and their cost, in addition to import taxes, takes 20% of his profits. And he says getting import permits for these nuclei is difficult, preventing him from buying enough to expand his business. After the nucleus is implanted, special attention is paid to how the nacre grows around it to avoid a misshapen pearl. They're working towards a large, almost perfectly round pearl. Workers invert the oysters and put them in their protective nets to bring back to sea. The South Sea pearl's unique, soft, satiny luster and thick nacre are a result of the warm waters it grows in. And a thick nacre means a large pearl. Harry says they must flip them regularly so the nacre grows evenly.
Jadi itu tidak boleh terlewatkan dia. Selama 40 hari itu ada schedule-nya. Kita bikin schedule untuk 3 hari. 1 minggu setelah suntik, kita biarkan. Setelah lubang yang kita robek itu nutup, baru kita bolak-balik.
After 40 days, workers remove the oysters from the sea and clean them weekly. Harry checks the implanted oysters monthly to see how the pearl is developing. This is done for up to 2 years, before the first pearl can be harvested.
Untuk 3 tahun pertama itu minimal size-nya dari 0,9 atau 0,8 gram atau bisa dikatakan 7 sampai 11 mm itu tahap yang pertama, 3 tahun pertama. Itu bijinya itu 1,3 gram lah, minimal 0,8 lah ya.
Harry implants the same oyster 2 more times. Each time, the pearl Aftol harvests is bigger. By the third harvest, the pearl can reach over 20 millimeters in diameter and over 8 grams in weight. But as much as pearl farmers like Mahmoud invest in the intense care needed to raise the oysters, the outcome is never guaranteed. Mahmoud says only 20% of the oysters that survive make the most valuable kind of pearl, almost perfectly round, lustrous and large. Mahmoud grades the pearls based on size, luster, shape and colour. The larger, rounder, shinier, minimally blemished pearls get the highest grade. That can be AAA or quadruple A, depending on the producer. Mahmoud then sells them to jewellers, like Rihanna Melia, who fashions the pearls into necklaces, earrings and rings. Rihanna seeks out the highest grade she can find, but it isn't easy.
Sangat sulit ditemukan untuk yang bagus. Saya juga kadang-kadang dalam satu hari itu, ini dalam sekarang ini, saya minim stok material.
Lower grades are more available, but they're rougher, asymmetrical, and lack shine, and in the jewellery world, those are the least desirable. But even the highest grade pearls are not perfectly round. That's because even though they're farmed, they're still natural pearls, so finding a near perfect pearl, let alone enough to make a string necklace, is extremely rare. It took 9 years for Rihanna to find enough AAA grade pearls to make this necklace. She is finally able to sell it this year for $36,000 to a local buyer. That makes sourcing these expensive pearls worth it for Rihanna, who relies on farmers to continue to produce high quality pearls. But Mahmoud says pearl farmers need more support from the government, specifically around making nuclei readily available.
Kalau untuk itu sih memang iya, kami bisa tidak bisa pungkiri ya, bahwa untuk perizinan import ini yang agak sulit.
Even in the high-end world of jewelry, Cuban link chains are a symbol of luxury. This 18-karat gold chain is worth $27,000, and some of the most valuable chains will cost 10 times that. Making a single chain requires the skill of more than 5 experienced jewelers and can take over 12 hours. So how exactly are Cuban link chains made? And is that what makes them so expensive?
Somebody had to literally take 14 hours of their day running hot steel through machinery to then turn it by hand, to then file it by hand, to then polish it by hand. You're not just wearing a chain, you're wearing somebody's blood, sweat, and tears and passion around your neck.
The origin of the Cuban link chain is tough to pinpoint, but it likely didn't start in Cuba. It was a quintessential part of hip-hop style in the 70s and 80s, and grew in popularity as hip-hop became more mainstream in the US. But not all Cuban link chains are created equal. Many Cuban link chains are made by machines in countries like the US, Italy, and China, but the authentic and most expensive ones are made by hand at just a few shops in Miami.
When you move into the higher end of Cuban link chains, which you get into the $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 chains, those have to be handmade. One, because of the attention to detail. The file, the tight links.
It's like going to a Ferrari dealer. You could buy a Ferrari off the lot, or you could have it made to how you want. This is a custom build.
A chain like this goes through 30 manual and time-consuming stages.
The skills come from your ability and practice and knowledge. Worldwide, I can't tell you an exact number. Within South Florida, there's a handful of people, literally a handful of people that could do this.
Not only is this process incredibly labor-intensive, it's also dangerous. Chino and his crew work with 1,000-degree flames to melt down the gold and form it into a bar.
You definitely got to be paying attention to what you're doing in this job. One mess up, you're gonna hurt yourself. There has been people that have lost fingers in this business.
That bar passes through a rolling machine as many as 12 times just to make it thinner. Each of the 9 jewelers at Gold Fever Miami has a specific job. At the stretch bench, one jeweler can spend over an hour just stretching the wire to length.
This isn't dirt, it's actual gold. If you look at my hands, you'll see the flakes of gold on them.
This wire then gets curled around a copper rod to form the shape for the links. For smaller chains, a drill gets the job done, but thicker ones need the strength of 2 jewelers. The most crucial stage of the process comes next. It also requires the most skill.
The soldering is the most intricate part of what you're doing. Essentially what you're doing is you're heating up gold, and right before it begins to break down and melt, you're introducing solder.
Solder is another type of metal that's used to permanently close each link.
So it's the balance of applying the right amount of flame with the right amount of technique to when those 2 metals meet, that solder melts and fuses into the gold. So if you left too long, the whole thing is just liquid gold. If done way too early, the solder won't melt properly and you won't get that fusion between the links.
You can't mess that up, or you're gonna create gaps in the chain, and you can't be scared to stop and just do it all over again.
It's no secret the price of gold plays a part in determining the cost of these chains. An ounce of gold costs $1,700 today. But even the most high-end Cuban links are mixed with something else. Gold itself is a very soft material, typically too soft to be made into jewelry on its own. It has to be alloyed with other metals. White gold, for example, is an alloy of gold made of white metals like silver, zinc, and nickel. Those metals make the gold more pliable, allowing it to be stretched and twisted during the jewelry making process, but they can be especially difficult to work with. One small movement can make all the difference. In rare cases with white gold, this can happen.
This is the reason why it costs so much. If any one of these links break, you then have to take it back to the soldering table, resolder it, and bring it back here and turn it again.
Once the links are properly turned and tightened, the chain will lie flat. A jeweler must then file down the chain so that each side is level and looks exactly the same.
And here is where the passion of the jeweler comes into hand to how beautiful he can make that shape.
But these Cuban links in particular didn't become so sought after or so valuable until recently. Google Trends shows that searches for Cuban link chains began taking off in 2012. And in the last 2 years, Gold Fever Miami sales have grown 100 times over. The shop used to sell $2,000 worth of Cuban links a month. That number is now over $200,000.
Whether you're the most famous or you're just starting off, to legitimize yourself as a rapper, you have to have jewelry. And if you have jewelry, you have a Miami Cuban link chain.
In 2012, Jay-Z wore one of the priciest Cuban links made at the time, worth $200,000. A year later, Daddy Yankee debuted his 10-kilo Cuban link chain in a music video. And there's even more traction in the music industry now.
They're so intertwined with pop culture, more specifically hip hop and reggaeton. Just about every song that has a music video will have a rapper with a Miami Cuban link chain.
It's become, in a way, like a status symbol. We have customers that want to match their Rolexes to their chains.
These versions are often decked out with diamonds, which naturally makes them pricier. But Gus doesn't see demand slowing for chains like this or the more modest ones.
Right now, as of March of 2021, we are pumping anywhere from 10 to 15 kilos in 5 days, so per 5 weeks. And we still can't keep up with the demand. We still have a wait time of 5 to 7 weeks.
This, coupled with the steep price of gold, means prices likely won't drop anytime soon.
Shaving off a millimeter too much of leather could ruin the fit of this bespoke shoe. To make a finished pair, artisans must carve, hammer, and stitch each detail to the exact specifications of a customer's foot, twice. One pair can cost over £5,000. Some designs cost over £12,000. So what's so special about how bespoke dress shoes are made? And is that what makes them so expensive? Cannons of London makes some of the world's most expensive bespoke shoes, all by hand, using traditional techniques. Even the thread the artisans use is hand-spun.
You could bring a craftsperson in here that made our shoes 100 years ago and they'd be able to start work probably straight away.
That's Simon. He's been making shoes for over 15 years.
The fit is tailored completely to each person, whereas a ready-made shoe is essentially a generic shape. It will either fit your right foot or your left foot, but it won't perfectly fit both.
The key difference is this, the last. It's a wooden mould carved to the exact measurements and features of the customer's foot.
It's the foundation of the whole shoe. It determines whether the shoe is going to be comfortable. It's also the style.
He starts by cutting away large amounts of wood, then makes small adjustments with hand tools.
Even the smallest little half a millimetre sometimes can just make all the difference. It can just throw the whole thing off. The easiest thing for me to do would be to just make a beautiful last. The challenge is to make it beautiful and to actually make it fit.
Last making is Simon's specialty. He inherited this workbench from the shoemaker who trained him.
This has been in the business for forever. I believe it was with the business before he came into it, which was in the 1950s.
Making a last can take days. It's a constant process of carving wood and checking the measurements. But that effort is worth it, because a last can be reused for future pairs, saving time and bringing down the cost. This workshop has thousands of lasts, some over 100 years old.
We're lucky enough to have many famous lasts. We've got Franklin D. Roosevelt, Charlie Chaplin's one, really amazing shape as well, very high arch there. We also have Fred Astaire. These are very, very elegant. If they're done right, they have the character of the person, so you can almost see everyone's character really. It's very fun working in a workshop. Bespoke shoemaking workshop has a particular smell to it. There's like the oak bark tan leather. Almost everybody comments on that when they first enter the workshop.
The most popular material for bespoke shoes is leather. And the more expensive the leather, the pricier the shoe.
I think our most expensive shoe, well, they're always ones made of crocodile or alligator. They generally cost around £11,000 or £12,000.
Before cutting, Reese examines the leather for any defects.
As I go through the skin, I pull up every section of the skin and examine it. And what I'm looking for is a blemish-free section. So it can't have any tick marks, tick bites, any stretch marks, because that will show up when the shoe is lasted and spoil the look of the shoe. At this level, anything like that is unacceptable. We have to have a perfect skin. Often we only cut one pair per skin.
This leather will become the upper, the top part of the shoe. Artisans pull it tightly over the last and carefully work it into shape to ensure there's no excess material or wrinkles. This step alone can take 2 days. It's a constant process of stretching, hammering, and scraping. Yasu has been a shoemaker for over 25 years. He works quickly, but each motion is intentional, bringing the shoe closer to its final shape. Achieving a clean fit is essential for premium bespoke shoes. But the upper isn't the only part of the shoe that needs a clean fit. The bottom of the shoe has 2 parts, the outer sole, which touches the ground, and the inner sole, which sits under your foot. To make the inner sole, artisans cut out leather and meticulously tack it around the last. As with the upper part of the shoe, artisans shape this material to perfectly match the customer's foot.
So this customer's got a really high arch in here, so we're going to do an insole up for support. And he's also got this pocket here where his joint sits that's been added. So basically this is going to be molded completely to the last. And this is one of the fundamental things that separates, ready to wear or factory made shoes from bespoke shoes.
For each step, shoemakers work with the shoe on their lap.
It basically just gives you control. You're able to switch back and forth. You can change the position of this quite freely. Check how it's sitting, check the movement of the leather. I think if you've got it in a held position, you just don't have that flexibility.
To fuse all of these pieces together, shoemakers use a sewing technique called welting. They sew a strip of leather around the shoe to attach the sole to the upper. Some shoe manufacturers use glue to combine all of the parts, but Simon says a stitched welt like this makes the shoe easier to repair.
It's ideal actually because the outsole can be stripped off. You can just take another piece of leather and stitch back through the welt again. So it's almost infinitely repairable. As long as the upper is kept in reasonable condition, the shoe really can last a lifetime.
All of the time and materials that go into making a bespoke shoe are reflected in the price. A well-made pair can easily cost 5 to 10 times more than ready-to-wear shoes.
A ready-made shoe would easily be made in a day. There's made in a factory environment. You could quite easily notice the difference. When you put your feet into the shoe, you'll lock into a bespoke shoe. It's because the insole has been blocked to the shape of the bottom of your foot.
For Simon, crafting the perfect fit for a client makes all the effort worth it.
I like the journey that it takes. Like you go on a journey with each of these individual people, which might last for many, many years. It could last for, your whole career when you're doing it.
For centuries, the UK was a hub for all kinds of shoemaking. But in the late 20th century, the industry struggled to compete with cheaper mass-produced shoes. Today, there is far less demand and far fewer shoemakers. Simon makes around 200 bespoke pairs each year. But the industry isn't gone yet. Over the past decade, there has been increased demand for bespoke shoes from Japan and the US. Many bespoke shoemakers in the UK now rely on their international clients. And Simon says there has been an increase in young craftspeople looking to learn the trade.
When I started, I was told by the master last maker that it was a dying trade, and actually the complete opposite has happened. There's so many young people now that are coming into the craft and learning about it and wanting to get involved and become shoemakers or last makers.
This is Kenji. He's using a centuries-old technique to dye silk for a kimono. It's physically demanding, but that's not the only challenge. He has to match this colour exactly, making adjustments by eye. And it's essential that the fabric inside this barrel remains white. Kenji won't know if he's successful until he opens the lid. This is one of over 20 steps required to make a kimono. You can buy a cotton kimono for $300, but a handmade chiso kimono can cost over $10,000. And the company's most expensive kimonos cost 10 times that. We followed 10 artisans, step by step, to find out what makes these kimonos so expensive. Versions of the kimono have been worn for centuries. Today, the kimono is viewed as formal wear, worn on special occasions like weddings or coming-of-age ceremonies. Part of the reason why Chiso's kimonos are so expensive is that they're made entirely out of silk. It takes around 12 meters of silk to make a single kimono. Chiso collaborates with a network of highly skilled artisans. Each step is done by hand and can take weeks to complete. This intricate design starts out as a simple sketch.
はじめだいたいこんな小さいやつで描いて、でこの大きくして、これあっ 下当たりするのに1日ぐらいですかね。でもこれをきれいに描き直そう思ったらやっぱり1週間は絶対かかる、10日ぐらい。これなんか細かいから結構かかりますね。
Once the design is ready, Hiroshi transfers it to the silk. This step is called drafting, and it can take up to 2 weeks. Hiroshi ensures that the design looks good when the kimono is worn, not just on a flat surface. These lines are critical to the design process, but you won't see them on the finished kimono. This paint is washed away after acting as a guide for other artisans. Hiroshi has 37 years of experience, but he's still very critical of his work.
必ず書き上がってからやっぱりあそこはしといたらこうしといたらっていうのがたくさん出てくるもんで、仕事なんでね、時間的なもんもありますんで、で何十時間かけて家言うんやったらそら何回もそれこそ自己満足でね。
Jiso's kimonos are known for their complex patterns, painted using a technique called yuzen. Artisans trace the design with a glue-like paste that separates colours when the silk is painted. It also gives a characteristic white outline to parts of the design.
なのでその線で描いたところは最終的に染まらずに生地の白色が出てくるので、その輪郭線っていうのは白色になります。
It's patient work, but Ai says it's all worth it when she sees the finished kimono.
私はもともと中学生ぐらいの時からこういう着物を作る職人になりたいなと思って京都に出てきたんですけれど、やっぱり根気はすごくいりますし、やっぱ座りっぱなしなのでちょっと肩が凝ってきたりとかもあるんですけど、根気さえあればっていうところはあります。とあとはやっぱり綺麗に仕上がった時とかはすごく嬉しいです。
This is just the start of a months-long process. Pieces of the kimono are sent off to different artisans across Kyoto. Each artisan must perfect their section while keeping in mind the final design. At Yoko's workshop, she dyes the base of the kimono with these large brushes.
とりあえず早く動かすっていうのが刷毛ムラいかないコツですし、着物を染めようと思ったら仕立てた時に全部の濃度が一緒になってるってことは同じリズムで全部いくっていうことなんですね。
Yoko and her assistant blend the edges, working around the design. But this isn't the only way kimonos are dyed. Some are dyed using a technique called shibori, which creates bold colours and distinct shapes. But it's very tedious work. Before Kenji starts working, artisans sew up the silk and bind this barrel.
子供自分からね、稽古して、教えてもらってやってるんです。ですから何十年ってなりますけどね。
The seam Hiromi is sewing forms the edge of the design. Then, Matsuyama wraps the silk along this wooden tub and tacks it into place before he attaches the lid. This step is key to preventing dye from bleeding inside. Now, it's time for Kenji to dip the silk. He works quickly but constantly monitors the silk to ensure it's dyed correctly. If the barrel remains in the dye for too long, the colours will start to bleed. Kenji cuts a strip of fabric, compares it to the swatch, and adjusts its dye accordingly.
染め屋によってみんな違いますけど、男の場合は反対色で作成していくから、入れすぎたらものすごく効くんです。反対色やから。
After the dyeing is complete, Kenji lifts the lid and examines his work. All of these steps combine to tell a story through the design of the kimono. Themes of nature or the seasons are common, while some designs reference poems or plays. One of the most skilled and delicate steps is the yuzen dyeing. Tomoko has 25 years of experience making kimonos.
具体的にどのような色をこの着物だったらどのようなイメージを膨らませてどのような色にしていくかっていうだいたい具体的な色を拾っていきます。
Yuzen dyeing has been practiced for centuries and has become an iconic feature of high-end kimonos. The technique is more expensive and time-consuming than screen printing, but Chiso's customers are willing to pay a premium for the result. Long-sleeved kimonos with complicated designs can take 2 to 3 weeks to paint.
自分で合わせた色を全部一つ一つここにテストをしてで記録として残しておくものです。でこれを見て次にこれを合わすには大体どうしたらいいかっていうのはもう入ってるっていうことです。数字にはできないので技術的に難しいものはやはり写実調のいわゆる自然のままのような花でありますとか草加紋っていうのの
The final step in the process is for artisans to apply gold leaf and embroider complex designs. Embroidery alone can take weeks to months depending on the design. The more embroidery a kimono has, the more expensive it will be. When all the pieces fall into place, the finished kimono is a work of art, a testament to the skill of each artisan who has worked on the silk.
着物1着作るのにだいたい20名ぐらいの人が関わってます。その手仕事のやっぱり良さ、細部であったり、それぞれの工程の非常に高い技術が要求されまして、それはやっぱり機械ではなかなかできない本当に細部の美しさであったり、こういった展示をするときに、柄がしっかり見えやすいように仮縫いを行っているという状態が、販売されている状態です。まずお客様の寸法を採寸をしてである程度は規定の寸法でお仕立てはするんですね。
Chiso's kimonos take 6 to 12 months to make, and those hundreds of hours of labor are reflected in the price. Most range from $7,000 to $14,000, but some of Chiso's elaborate designs cost over $100,000. And the accessories traditionally worn with a kimono increase the price even more.
で、お着物がなぜ高くなるかっていうことなんですけれども、いかに職人がどれだけ手を加えたかっていう、それは友禅の細かさであったり、もちろん分量も関係してきますし。
Customers looking for less expensive kimonos might choose to rent or to buy refurbished ones, which usually cost a few $100s, but still provide good quality. Buying a cotton kimono, or one without complex yuzen, is much more affordable. These kimonos are often worn for less formal events. But current demand for expensive, complex kimonos is low. Kimono sales declined dramatically in the 90s during Japan's economic crash, and the industry has continued to shrink. Today, it's around 14% of the size it was in 1975. Chiso sells around 4,000 kimonos each year, but the relevance of the garment in modern life is limited.
両極だと思うんですけど、いやもう全く関心がないわっていう方と、やっぱりちょっと着物にやっぱ日本人だから着物に目覚めてきたっていう方と。
Further complicating matters, the artisans it relies upon to maintain production are getting older.
で、やっぱり伝統的な技術はやっぱり職人の技術力が高いっていうことが条件なんですが、だいたい職人さん今で60代とか70代の方たくさんいらっしゃるんで、30年以上仕事していただいている方が多いと思います。今新しい職人さんを見つけるのはやっぱりそういう 職人の仕事をやりたいっていうそういう若い方もいらっしゃいますんで、ただ全体的には職人の数はやっぱり減っていってますね。
Supreme, baby. Just bought a faux fur jacket for $1,000. So people want to know, hey, look, that guy's wearing Supreme. But people also make a living off it too. So
these two jackets are nearly identical, both made by the North Face and both using Gore-Tex technology. This one on the left costs $300. The one on the right is currently selling for nearly $1,300. So what's the difference? This one just happens to be a North Face collaboration with Supreme. So why would someone pay nearly $1,000 more for basically the same jacket? And what is it that makes Supreme so expensive? From the eye-catching logo to the limited product releases and artist collaborations, over the past 20 years, Supreme has transitioned from a small skateboarding store in New York to a $1 billion streetwear company. But for its fans, Supreme is more than just a brand. It's often an obsession and an entire subculture of its own. Since its origin, Supreme has maintained an image of being authentic. Founded by James Jebbia in 1994, Supreme started as a skateboarding store in the Soho neighborhood of Manhattan. The store started out selling hoodies and sweatshirts aimed towards the burgeoning New York skate scene. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, Supreme functioned as a skate brand, catering to both skaters and those interested in the emerging streetwear style. But Supreme's limited releases and attitude has pushed them far beyond their beginnings. The most iconic Supreme design is their box logo. Originally, simple white italic lettering over a plain red background. This design so closely echoes the work of conceptual artist Barbara Kruger that it's hard not to see it as a direct copy. And copyright theft is something that's in Supreme's DNA. Supreme's appropriation of images is one of the keys to its popularity. Pop cultural imagery and logos are copied and adapted in a way that makes their designs feel more like contemporary art or graffiti than a big fashion brand. Supreme's first branded t-shirt was simply a photo of Robert De Niro in the film Taxi Driver, along with the iconic red and white logo. And the company's use of often unlicensed imagery has led to Supreme being served cease and desist letters from Louis Vuitton, the NHL and the NCAA.
The more we've been exposed to a brand, the more likely we are going to be developing an association, a familiarity, almost a sense of connection with it. With Supreme, there's no elements of status, and they went completely for what a logo should be all about. Standing out, being identifiable.
The recognizability is key to Supreme's power as a brand, but the items are also purposefully difficult to get a hold of, and their products are kept in high demand by very limited releases.
Tuesday at 11 a.m. you go to the Supreme website, you enter your basic information, your name, email, phone number, and credit card number. Then they'll send you a text later in the day to let you know if you've been selected to stand in line. Then on Wednesday, they'll send you a text telling you the time and store to report to. And on Thursday, you go to the store at the time that you're given. There's a one limit per style rule in Supreme. So what that means is if a shirt comes out in black, red, and gray, you can only get it in gray. So if I want it in black and red, I need to get 2 other people to get it for me. So they need to stand in line for me. A lot of the people who do stand in line are standing in line for someone else.
Supreme only sells their merchandise at 11 brick and mortar stores across the world, as well as their online store. It was around the mid to late 2000s that Supreme really started to pick up speed. This success was partly due to what's been dubbed the Kanye effect. In 2006, Supreme released their Supreme Blazer SB, a collaboration with Nike. The shoes retailed for around $150, with resale prices ranging from $300 to $400. In July 2007, West was pictured wearing the shoes at the Grammy Foundation's Starry Night party. After the photos were released, the resale price of the shoes doubled to $800. Similarly, the teal box logo sweatshirt worn by Tyler the Creator in his She music video, originally priced at around $150, sold for $3,500. But not everything from Supreme is going to end up being valuable. Sellers like Chris have to decide what's going to be popular and what items will give them the best return.
So how I decide on what I think is going to resell is based mainly on what I would wear. You can also go to these Instagram accounts and they'll have Instagram polls, Twitter polls, talking about, oh, like you can upvote this, you can downvote this, and it's this crowdsourcing tool to understand the market better and find out, oh, this one's gonna resell, or this one is really popular. The most money that I've made off of one Supreme item is the 2017 Fall-Winter collaboration with the North Face, and it was a mountain parka. I bought it for $398 and I sold it for $950.
This incredibly limited release means that buying and reselling Supreme items is where the real money is. When you look at the prices of Supreme items in store, they aren't as outlandish as you may expect. They retail for around $38 for a t-shirt to $138 for a sweatshirt, but it's once these products have sold out that they can reach 30 times their original price. Many other big brands are now adopting this method of very limited releases to generate hype around their products. From trainers to other streetwear brands, these releases make people feel like they're part of something exclusive.
The more we make a consumer work for a particular access to a product, the more alluring these services and products are becoming. So I think Supreme know very well how to make something incredibly accessible and sexy by allowing us to jump through as many hoops as possible to make it relevant for them.
But there's something about Supreme that's different. Could any other company get away with selling a brick or a branded crowbar? What is it that gives Supreme such a devoted following?
I think it's the hype. They come out with really cool items. I personally feel like they do. It's a name brand, and name brands attract anybody at the end of the day.
In New York, especially, it's a lot of streetwear. So like people want to have that like exclusive, those exclusive items. So I feel like Supreme, they keep their quantities very low because of the high demand. People will pay that price if it's something they like.
Supreme, I think the thing that really causes people to spend money and wait in line is kind of the it factor that it has, right? And they've done an amazing job of limiting quantities and underproducing to the demand. So in that way, their market of people that would want to buy the product isn't just people that are interested in the product, but it's also people that are interested in making money. And that demographic is way bigger than people that are just interested in streetwear. So when there's an opportunity to make money, then there's going to be a huge line of people around the block, regardless if they want to wear the product or not.
Supreme has managed to somehow keep their cool, alternative and exclusive image despite their expansion, and has still maintained its skater credentials despite selling a 50% stake in the brand to a private equity firm. This is the Jordan 1 Retro Fragment. It originally retailed for $185 in 2014, but today a pair can resell for up to $2,000. And this is the Yeezy Boost 350 V2 Core Black Red, which retailed at $220 in 2016 and now resells for $900. The Fragment's resale value more than doubles its competition. These shoes were both sold in limited releases, so why did Jordans become so much more expensive? It all has to do with the value of the Jordan brand and how it makes and markets its iconic sneakers.
The fact that it's made in China where the tariffs are higher, made in the best factories, made with more material. Basketball shoes tend to use more material than a running shoe, and then trying to be as close to the original product are all things that have driven the prices up there.
According to Matt's research, the average price of a basketball sneaker is about $110, while Jordan's average price is about $145. To understand why Jordan brand can charge more, let's go all the way back to the beginning, before the Jordan 1 was introduced. Before the 1984-85 season, Nike signed an unproven MJ to a 5-year deal worth more than 3 times the richest contract to that point. But that wasn't the only unusual decision Nike made while launching the Air Jordan brand. The Air Jordan 1 swapped the standard white upper for a black one, which violated the NBA's uniform policy and resulted in a $5,000 fine per game.
On September 15th, Nike created a revolutionary new basketball shoe. On October 18th, the NBA threw them out of the game.
Nike recognized this unique marketing opportunity and footed Mike's bill as he went on to win Rookie of the Year, playing every game in his band's namesake sneaker.
It just showed that he was rebellious and it was something that people gravitated to and they wanted to wear them too. It was like the first sneaker that really shook up sneaker culture. I think it's the shoe that catapulted sneakers to where they are today because it was the first shoe that people saw and wanted more than the average shoe.
Mike's success as a rookie made a big impact on Nike's bottom line. The original Jordan 1 hit stores across America in March 1985, priced at $65. And at the end of the year, the Air Jordan franchise had made $100 million in revenue. The Air Jordan 2 wasn't as successful. After just 18 games in his new design, Jordan suffered a season-ending broken foot. Reports surfaced about Mike being unhappy and looking to jump ship to Adidas. The Air Jordan 3 became a crucial crossroads for Jordan and Nike. Enter Tinker Hatfield. Today, he's known as the architect of modern sneaker design. Back then, he was known for innovating Nike's Air Max technology. His Jordan 3 design became legendary. It pioneered the first ever mid-cut basketball sneaker, included elephant print overlays, and immortalized his airness in the Jumpman logo. And Tinker incorporated his Air Max technology into the sole.
Those three things, I think, brought its cultural importance because it was a statement shoe, right? So now you were actually making a statement by wearing a basketball shoe, which wasn't necessarily the purpose of wearing a basketball shoe off court.
The company's rollout of the Jordan 3 was equally as legendary as the design. Nike's marketing team connected Jordan with Spike Lee for what would become some of the most memorable commercials in history.
You know how I get up for my game? Do you know? That's right, Air Jordan, Air Jordan, Air Jordan.
You really saw the Jordan brand become a luxury brand in the United States. It was our designer sneaker, and it made the shoes very visible. And that's a big part of the conspicuous consumption, is to be able to look across the room and see that that person's wearing a $100 shoe or a $300 shoe in today's parlance.
During all this, the price of Jordans had jumped to $100, significantly higher than the top basketball sneaker at the time, Converse's Weapon. Jordan marketed its sneakers as a luxury product to match MJ's talent and style, and in the process created a cultural phenomenon, bringing sports apparel into the mainstream.
He was a very marketable figure with a great smile and a big hoop earring, and people wanted to look like him. And so you started seeing this face all over the world.
But the brand priced out kids from low-income families who wanted them the most. And by the 90s, Jordans were so coveted, violence erupted around them. 2 teens were even killed for their Jordan sneakers. Nevertheless, the phenomenon continued. Jordans were a status symbol that couldn't be stopped.
Whether you're into fashion, whether you're into sports, or whether you're just a fan of Michael Jordan himself, you have to know about Jordan Brand. You have to own something from Jordan Brand.
Hatfield continued to design Jordan's signature sneakers for the next 12 years. The Jordan brand became a sneaker giant, and MJ became the greatest player in basketball history. Their run lasted for more than a decade, but that was all about to change. In 2013, Adidas released new technology, signed Kanye West, and started making big gains. Despite increased competition, Jordan's prices stayed high. That year's new Jordans retailed at $250, the highest price for a new signature Jordan release to that point. Retro prices jumped too. A retro is a re-release of an original shoe.
$220 for these, $400 for these.
This happens with every sneaker brand. As they see the resale prices of their shoes go higher, they want more of the pie. And so they started to try and get more of the pie.
When Adidas came out with a lot of their more popular styles during that era, it caused a lot of people to just say, I'm gonna stop buying Jordans for right now, and I'm gonna focus on these newer styles that are comfortable, that are cool, that are trendy.
Jordans weren't selling out as fast as they had in previous years, and Jordan increased supply to balance out revenues, but it oversaturated the market. According to Soul Collector, between September and November 2017, Jordan released 30 different retros. The price hikes, combined with an oversaturated market and increased competition, led to what Soul Collector called Jordan fatigue, and Adidas's market share nearly doubled. Jordan brand president Larry Miller admitted that the brand had released too many shoes and needed to figure out how to connect to young consumers again. And Nike CEO Mark Parker did just that with his Edit and Amplify strategy. He helped Nike's R&D cut down from 350 sneaker ideas to 50. This helped the company be more disciplined and catch up with the speed of the sneaker market.
The secret sauce for Jordan over the years has always been unrequited demand, never having enough shoes to satisfy the market, which made the kid come back on the next release and hope that he would get a pair.
Jordan mounted its comeback in 2018. The brand ramped up offerings for female customers, and its Concord 11 retro release was its most successful shoe introduction ever, according to Parker. And they've been able to connect to a new generation, tapping Travis Scott, Virgil Abloh, and more to offer their takes on the historic designs.
Today, you don't really need to market a Jordan product, and so it becomes a pull market. The idea is that the product is so sensational, so wanted by the consumer, that it's pulling them into the store.
The brand is pulling in customers like the old days, and according to Parker, Jordan 1s are more coveted than ever. Resale info backs that up. Remember that comparison we did at the beginning? It looks like Jordan is getting the balance just right between nostalgia and innovation.
This has to be my favorite sneaker of all time. This is the Air Jordan 4 white cement.
The Aleli May Jordan 1 Biotech.
The Air Jordan 1. It represents the beginning of Jordan's career.
I think it's interesting to see how the Jordan brand continues to evolve as it ventures deeper into the woman and unisex market.
You know, it just reminds me of my childhood. This is really what got me into the sneaker game.
It's the reason why a lot of us sneakerheads exist. And this Lakers colorway, man, that's just perfect.
When Doc Martens first appeared in the UK in 1960, they were working boots that would cost you under $3 a pair. These days, a pair of made-in-England boots could set you back $225. So what has changed, and why are these shoes now so expensive? Doc Martens are a style icon that has endured for over 50 years. They've been worn by everyone, from Kanye West and Cardi B to the Dalai Lama and even Pope John Paul II, when the Vatican placed an order for the famous 8-eyelet boot in black, white and navy leather. While a pair of Docs may not be the most expensive boot out there, their price and use has gone through a pretty radical transformation. And the company producing them has shifted dramatically too. From a family-owned local factory to an international fashion brand owned by a private equity firm, since 2014 the price of boots has risen by almost 25%. Sales have grown year on year and profits were up 70% in 2018 to 19. So how did the company go from its humble beginnings to producing 7 million pairs of these shoes each year? Before they got their punk image, Doc Martens weren't quite so cool. The patented technology behind the boots, the air cushion sole, was invented in 1945 by Dr. Klaus Martens, a German army doctor who injured his ankle in a skiing accident and was looking for a comfortable alternative to hard leather sole boots. The market for this new shoe technology wasn't the punks or skinheads you might associate with the history of these shoes, but older women in need of comfortable and practical footwear. They were even advertised as perfect gardening shoes at one point. It was when this technology was brought over to the UK in 1960 that the iconic shoe you might recognise was first made. The air cushion sole was licensed to the Griggs Company in Northampton, and the 1460 boot was created. The iconic stitching and recognisable heel loop were added, and the boots were sold to factory workers across England. At the time, these boots cost only $3 a pair. Even with inflation, that's just over $50. They were cheap, hard-wearing and perfect for postmen, policemen and workers on their feet all day. The boot was quickly adopted by any countercultural movement that appeared, and they became a mainstay in glam, punk, skinhead, ska and goth style, among many others. Doc Martens' fashion status wasn't always guaranteed though. After the boom in the 90s, the boots dipped out of fashion and the company struggled, almost going bust in the early 2000s. As the industry shrank, the cost of manufacturing shoes in England also got more expensive, and by 2002 it already cost around $87 for a pair of Doc Martens. That's around $140 with inflation. Northamptonshire was once the home of shoemaking in England. In the mid-19th century there were over 2,000 shoemakers working in the region, but as many of these shoemakers struggled, the majority went under or moved production abroad, and now there are just over 30 left. Doc Martens followed suit, moving their production to Asia. The company still makes shoes in its Northamptonshire factory, but now this is only around 2% of its total production. Doc Martens says this relocation hasn't changed the way its shoes are made at all. We wanted to see if there actually was a difference between the new Asian-made boots, the more expensive made-in-England variety, or a vintage pair from before the move. We spoke to someone who's torn down multiple pairs of these shoes to find out.
I'm Weston Kay, I'm a professional leather worker and I cut boots and shoes in half on YouTube. Yeah, I would say the production methods are really similar between the Asian-made boots and the made-in-England boots. A lot of the same features on the inside of how they stitch their boots are identical. The construction is really similar. They still heat sew the sole to the welt. I think a lot of the big differences between the vintage boots and the newer ones, it's stuff that you would only notice if you cut it in half almost, or if you wore them for long enough time. The vintage Doc Martens had a way better midsole that adds a lot of comfort. They had a wooden shank and the leather was just a lot better. So they lasted longer, they're more comfortable, they have the support you need. The newer ones just have worse versions of the old ones' materials. I wouldn't describe them as a super durable or long-lasting boot, but a lot of people are just buying these boots because they're Doc Martens anyway, and they're gonna be comfortable, they're gonna last a decently long time, so most people are gonna be happy with them.
We contacted Doc Martens about these comments, and a spokesperson told us, "We have not altered any materials or manufacturing processes that would jeopardize the quality of our products. And where specification changes have occurred, they've been made to enhance our iconic products and to ensure we improve the wearer's experience. We removed the shank in 2000, after realising it did not improve the structural integrity of our boots. In 2005, our internal filler was changed from felt to a better quality material. The 90s boot being referenced, along with our current Made in England range, have a leather thickness of 1.8mm, whereas our main range has a thickness of 1.6. Regardless of the materials, Doc Martens' style has endured. And since 2002, the brand's popularity has skyrocketed. The countercultural image that made it so famous is something that has stuck to this day, despite the expansion from small-town British-made boot to international icon. And for fans of the boot, this can be an obsession. Over the years, the company has evolved from producing one boot in 1960 to producing around 250 styles each year. And as its popularity has grown, so has the competition. Over recent years, Doc Martens has filed lawsuits against Urban Outfitters, Vans, Boohoo and others in an attempt to protect its iconic boot design. In 2014, the company was sold by the family and bought by private equity firm Permira. Since this takeover, the price of boots has risen by almost 25%, and profits were up 70% in 2018 to 19, in large part due to the newfound success of their vegan range. And while the boots have transitioned from an English worker's boot into a global fashion icon, their style has endured, and their devoted fan following isn't going anywhere. Hermès Birkin bags are some of the most expensive bags in the world. Ranging anywhere from $9,000 to $500,000, the bags embody absolute luxury.
A Birkin bag? You've heard of it? Of course. That's a very nice purse.
The exclusive accessory is even considered by some to be a better investment than gold or the stock market. And the world's most expensive bag is an Hermès Himalaya Birkin bag that sold for $500,000. So what is it that makes Birkin bags so expensive? The story of the bag begins with its namesake, Jane Birkin. On a flight from Paris to London, the English actress happened to be seated next to the chief executive of Hermès, Jean-Louis Dumas.
Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
Jane was known for carrying a wicker basket wherever she went, and used it for everything from groceries to diapers. When she tried to fit her famous basket in the overhead compartment, the lid came off, spilling the contents everywhere. Jane complained to her seatmate that it was impossible to find a weekend bag she liked. Dumas introduced himself as the head of Hermès, and the pair spent the flight sketching possible handbag designs on the back of an airplane sick bag. A year later, Dumas presented Jane with the Birkin bag, a spacious yet sophisticated leather design perfect for everyday use. The Birkin's pockets made it highly functional, and the bag's seals to prevent anything from spilling. Hermès makes the bags in France, using premium materials like calf skin, alligator skin, and even ostrich skin. Each bag is made entirely by hand. Although Birkins are one of the most exclusive and sought-after bags today, they actually weren't all that popular when they first launched. It wasn't until the 90s that the Birkin became one of the it bags of the era. Now, they're the ultimate status symbol. Victoria Beckham reportedly has a collection of over 100 Birkins, estimated to be worth over $2 million. And Singaporean socialite and entrepreneur Jamie Chua is considered to have the world's largest Birkin collection, with over 200 bags. But you can't just walk into Hermès and get one. While there used to be a wait list, nowadays all you can do is hope to be important enough or spend enough to be offered a Birkin bag. And if you're offered one, don't expect to be able to choose the colour or size. Hermès also places limits on how many Birkin bags a client can purchase per year. This dedication to preserving the exclusivity of the bag has certainly paid off, and the disparity in demand and access has created a thriving resale market. A 2017 study revealed that the value of Hermès Birkin bags has increased 500% in the last 35 years, an increase of 14% per year. One of the most coveted models comes from Hermès Himalaya collection, which comes in 3 sizes. Often referred to as the holy grail of handbags, the white Himalaya Birkin bag features 18-carat white gold hardware and more than 200 diamonds. The 35cm model in particular is very rare, and has sold at record prices year after year. Most recently, in 2019, it sold for over $500,000. Professional sports betting consultant David Wancher, also known as Vegas Dave, made the record-breaking purchase.
The reason I bought the Birkin bag is I love breaking records. I broke all the sports betting records. I wanted to break the most expensive bag record. I'm all about raising the bar. Also, It's about supply and demand. The only other one in the world is by Steve Harvey's wife, so there's only 2 in the world. Not even Kim Kardashian has this. So I actually bought it for content, believe it or not, so I could take videos with it, pictures of it, getting people to talk about me.
The record-breaking sale actually took place over social media.
Sale was pretty easy. I posted on social media. I have about 1 million followers. I'm looking for a bag. This lady hit me up, Privé Porter. She messaged me, said she'd get me the bag. I realized it was the most expensive bag. She said it would break the record.
Yeah.
And this is for sure the record, 500,000.
Absolutely, most expensive bag ever sold.
We closed this deal in about 3 to 4 days, really, really fast. I actually do use the bag. Most people think I'm crazy. They put it away like in a safe and they never touch it again. I've taken it out twice, once to a nightclub in Vegas as a great piece of content. It's definitely worth the cost because you could offer me $1 million cash and I wouldn't sell it. My asking price is $2 million. If not, I'll just keep the damn thing.
It's also made with white or albino crocodile skin, which is extremely rare. The costly skin is painstakingly dyed to emulate the snowy appearance of the Himalayan mountains.
The high retail value and resale value is because these are pieces of artwork. These artisans train years and years to make one of these bags. And they may even train 10 years before even they're allowed to make a Birkin.
Another reason for the bag's high price, of course, is the limited availability. The total number of Birkin bags Hermes produces each year is a well-guarded secret, but it's estimated that there may be around 200,000 in circulation. And for the luxury resale market, Birkin bags are a hot commodity. Online retailer Privé Porter uses Instagram and WhatsApp to sell the bags online. And luxury reseller The Real has hundreds of Birkins available at any given time, many of which are priced well over the original retail cost.
The Birkin bag does retain and sometimes exceeds its value. It really does depend on the leather, the color, the size of the bag, the hardware. There are so many factors that go into pricing a Birkin that it could really vary. However, if you do buy a Birkin, let's say in 2004, and maybe the retail at that time was $5,000, you most likely will be able to sell it even if you have worn it so many times for $5,000, $6,000.
Even as resellers like The Real and Privé Porter have made more Birkins available than ever, the prices haven't gone down.
If you go to Hermes, you may not always get the exact color, size that you want. Here, we have almost every single option, and if that means you have to pay a small premium, people and our clients are willing to do so. Even though that there has been such a saturation of these bags, not one bag is the same. So let's say as an Attain Birkin 35 with gold hardware. We only have one right now, and if it's sold, we may not get another for a while. So someone's looking for that, and they'd be willing to pay an extra maybe $10,000 to get that bag as soon as possible. And all these bags are handmade, artisan craftsmanship. It's a piece of artwork. Not one is the same, not even one stitch.
So if you have an extra $10,000 lying around, it could be worthwhile to invest it in a Birkin. Just make sure that you're not falling for a fake. From Canal Street in New York City to websites like eBay, the counterfeit market is full of luxury knockoffs, and Birkins are no exception. Back in 2012, Hermes sued several websites for selling fake products and won $100 million in damages. That same year, French police cracked down on an international crime ring that was manufacturing counterfeit Birkin bags. The crime ring reportedly included actual Hermes employees. Only 2 employees were arrested, but Hermes believed that several other employees could have been involved. And despite all their efforts, fake products continue to flood the market. The quality of counterfeit bags has also vastly improved over the years, making it difficult to tell whether a bag is real or fake. However, there are a few tricks to spotting a fake Birkin.
The handle should never be too long. If they look too long, longer than the bag, then it is most likely inauthentic. The hardware shouldn't be too shiny or protrude out. And the feet, another big thing, is one of the best things I always check, is that the feet should never screw off. They are hammered in. The leather itself should feel very supple, very luxurious.
And if the price seems too good to be true, it probably is. While many other handbag styles have come and gone, it looks like the Birkin is here to stay. And the bag has become synonymous with status in a way that many other luxury goods have yet to. Despite its popularity, the bag features no prominent logos and is only recognisable to people who already know what it is. In Birkin, Hermes has created something that feels inaccessible and thus highly exclusive. As for whether the Birkin will always be so expensive, only time will tell.